you think about the most, we're going to talk about a little bit of non-American football, also known as soccer. And we got the UCL championship league going on right now. And you know what, Kelsey? It's been very busy. Round of 16, the round of 16 draw underway. How are we feeling, sir? Like, I know you've been looking forward to this. We talked about this. You had the UEFA Championships video breakdown a couple of weeks ago too, leading up to this point. How are you feeling, sir? Like, this is not your Super Bowl, but it's your Super Bowl, I guess. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
exactly it's your UEFA Cup at the.
it's my kick around. It's a good time. No, it's honestly I love this stretch of the Champions League season. So that's anybody who doesn't know what's happened in the Champions League, I'll break it down for you. This year they did something different. They did the league format, which is completely different from how they normally do. Normally it's a group stage. Instead, they just clumped all the teams together. Said screw it. We're gonna run a group format. League standings played 6 games. Obviously, my favorite team, Liverpool, finished on top of the league standings. Barcelona came in second. There were the only two going into the last match day of the group stage of the league stage, um, eligible to move on, and then stretches from position 3 all the way down to 26. There were only 24 teams eligible. We're all eligible to try to move on. That got narrowed down. No surprises, thankfully, in that one that didn't make it. Almost didn't make it, though, Man City, looking at you. Um, and then, yeah, we just had the playoffs, which was really cool. They did a playoff for seedings 9 through 24 to try to narrow it down to the next 8 getting in. So 1 through 8 got automatic bye, 9 through 24 got that next round. I got that playoff round. Those just finished up, and yeah, it was exciting. Some of these matches were really good. And then there was PSG who decided to put it to Brest, which is still the best team name in all of the Champions League this year. I will die on that hill, and so will Micah Richards.
I'm more of a leg guy myself, but you know what? You can't argue with Brest at the top. But as you kind of mentioned too, like I want to look at the top half of the knockout bracket as well too. I mean, you got Real Madrid, you got PSG, Arsenal, and Inter Milan up in that region too. So how do we feel about that upper half of the bracket? Like that's looking like the
Yeah.
much stronger end of the bracket, if you will.
Yeah, so it's really weird with the way they did the bracket because it was like set games, set matchups got matched up against the teams that got a bye. And it's kind of weird because you get two teams that one of the two teams that get a bye that matches up with these bigger name teams. Like you said, there's Real Madrid, Man City, were two teams that faced off against each other to move on. And then Juventus, another team, Dortmund, PSG, Bayern Munich, all teams that are in that knockout round compared to the first 8, which you would have thought they would have been there. They decided not to. And yeah, Hector, unfortunately, you guys barely qualified, so I don't want to hear it from you, sir. I think there's a jersey bet on the line, by the way, from Hector. If you don't believe me, just head on over to Insert Name FC and get to check that out. But no, yeah, there's a lot of big names that had to play this playoff round that kind of surprised me. And I think it sets up for some really exciting matchups in that round of 16 moving on, and more so than we normally get from round of 16. Like, normally there's a couple meh matches, then maybe there's one good match. Like, we have potentially 3 to 4 heavy hitters, specifically starting with PSG. Who they face off with? Is it Liverpool or is it Barcelona? Who knows? The draw literally takes place in 2 days on the 22nd. So if you're listening to this after the 22nd, the draw just happened. If you're not listening to it after the 22nd, well, it's coming up. Don't worry, guys. We're gonna be there. I think it's a lot of excitement coming up, and I think the matchups, they're kind of writing themselves here of what could possibly happen. As you mentioned, as I mentioned, PSG potentially Liverpool or Barcelona, Real Madrid either facing Atletico Madrid, their in-city rivals, or Bayer Leverkusen, who is coached by Xabi Alonso, who is a former Madrista himself. So yeah, there's that matchup. I mean, Bayern Munich also facing off against the other team from Atletico versus Leverkusen, which if they end up against Leverkusen, there's a German matchup at right there. It's a whole bunch of wild situations that could happen. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited, man. I just think one of these teams that were in the playoff round might actually be a team to be reckoned with for a Champions League spot, like a final spot.
Absolutely. Before we move forward with that too, one thing that maybe some casual fans of like UEFA and different just overseas soccer in general might be curious about. There's a lot of word about like country protection, like certain teams from countries can't play each other, that sort of thing. That's not the case here. Clubs from
Nope.
the same country can play each other in the knockout playoff round going forward. Do you think that's going to change? How do you think that affects things moving forward? Because, like you mentioned as well, PSG was able to play Brest, one of the top 3 games in the knockout playoff round, which they probably wouldn't have in other situations. They'd be going after the
Yeah.
legs or the thighs.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's one of those things in especially World Cup football. that was a big deal. But also when they had the group stage, that was a big deal. They only had so many from each different league, essentially. So the FA, which is the English Premier League, that couldn't play. They could only be two Premier League teams in one group. Now that was gone. They were all playing each other, which was fantastic. And now we've already had great matchups in the league stage. We've already had great matchups in the playoff stage. Now we get even better matchups in this round of 16 and beyond. And so it's like, it was a test this year for how it would play out. As an American fan, I love it because I love these type of things where it's like a round robin, but a full round robin, not just a select 3 round robin. It's a full 6 game round robin followed by then you get into a playoff bracket. That's where it gets exciting for me. Obviously, a lot of European fans may not love it as much, but I think for the US fans, like American fans, this is a way for us to get into it a little more because we all love brackets. We all love playoffs. The MLS is set up to have a playoff champion, not to have a regular season champion that matters. So, it's something for American fans that they understand a little more. But I like it seeing I like it coming earlier into the Champions League setup instead of just every round a reseeding, which I do think there's times and places for reseeding. This not so much one of them. I think when you're in the Champions League round of 16, screw seedings, like screw reseeding, just play whoever's next. I don't care anymore. Give me the best games.
That's what we're looking for sure. So now I want to get into a little bit of the bracket as we get moving forward and take a look at a few different games we want to watch out for. One that really sticks out to me, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I'm looking at Real Madrid taking on Atletico and Leverkusen. What are your thoughts on that matchup? Do you think that one is? I think that could be a very interesting game, depending on regardless of who gets matched up in that one. Honestly, I think that's a very
Yeah.
interesting matchup either way.
Yeah, Bayer Leverkusen last year, a team that was 1 game away from being completely undefeated on all competitions, literally only losing in the Europa League finals. Absolutely insane run by them. And like I said, they're led by Xabi Alonso, who himself was a former Real Madrid player, also a former Liverpool player. Um, and if they go up against Real, that's an in-city rivalry. That is a huge rivalry in Spanish soccer, and that's like one that you talk about legacy. That's one that establishes legacy in a lot of ways. It's not El Clasico, but it is as close as it gets to El Clasico. The Madrid derby is something that's worth watching, and that Atletico Madrid or Leverkusen situation, honestly, either one of those, that's going to be probably my top build match. The only alternative is if it's Bayern Munich versus Leverkusen as like the two games to watch, which is funny because whichever team doesn't get matched up against Real Madrid gets the unlucky pleasure of facing Bayern Munich. Like, you guys got to buy, but now you have to go against Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. So good luck, whoever you are. Yeah, I love both of the potential matchups that could happen here. Just for so many different aspects. There's a lot of excitement there.
Absolutely. And we'd be hard remiss not to mention, as your boys over in Liverpool, looks like they could be taking on either PSG or Benfica. What are we
Yeah.
thinking? How do we feel about that one? How do you like your guys?
God, I hope it's Benfica.
Hmm.
If I'm just gonna full bias, I'm hoping it's Benfica. Not that that's any better. It just matches up better with how Liverpool plays. And this year being what it is for Liverpool, I have a lot more hopes for the Premier League championship than I do for a Champions League title. I'm not saying it's not possible, but obviously being at the top of the Premier League standings going into this round of 16 for the Champions League, you start having to make a choice between who's playing and who's not in those midweek games, which the Champions League games are midweek games. And so now you're talking about, all right, are your best players going to play during the weekend or are they going to play during midweek? Take your pick. You have to pick one. You can't have them both, especially nowadays with player rest, which we talk about in all the other sports. With this one, it's definitely. I hope Liverpool face off Benfica. I will say I hope they don't in the same point because now we're talking about a number 1 seed potentially get knocked out by Portugal's second best team, and that would hurt a lot as a Liverpool fan. But yeah, I'd prefer that more so than PSG. PSG at any given point in time is as they did in the playoff round, a 10 gold team, like 10-0 on aggregate over Brest, 7-0 in the last matchup. Like that's dangerous for any team, let alone a team that's coming off of a bye, if you will, in the Champions League play. And so yeah, there's a lot of potential bad news for Liverpool in that situation if they play PSG. So hopefully, I'm hoping Benfica. But yeah, I think it's going to be good if it's PSG. It's just I'm not going to be happy during the whole time.
You're going to be stressing a lot more, most likely. Even if it'll be great on the other end of it, but getting there, well, it might take a toll on you.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, Hector dropped this nugget on us, which I think is fantastic. So far, there's no winner in the Madrid derby. So both matches have been draws. So Atletico versus Real, both have been draws. So now you have a situation where, yeah, if they match up in the Champions League here, that decides the trifecta for the matchup between them. So even more to play for.
Absolutely, 100%. And one little note too, as well, is it looks like January signings can play in the Champions League. Teams were able to make up to 3 changes to their official squad, so there is potential for a little bit of movement in the last 30 or so days. That has happened in the last 30 or so days. Still an
Except for
overall limit of
Barcelona,
25 players,
by the way.
except for Barcelona, of course.
Yeah, so Barcelona, fun fact for Barcelona, if nobody's kept up with this, it's a really hilarious situation. They spent a lot of money 2 summers ago, and they have not been able to register some of their signings from that. Still, they got registered for like a month, and then the Spanish Premier League's like, no. The La Liga said, no, 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 that's not happening anymore. So they're putting an embargo on these guys being registered. So some of them can play, some of them can't, depending on how much you've gotten in trouble for financial fair play, which is a new situation for a lot of these teams. Man City fighting off like 147 cases or something like that of financial fair play illegal allegations. And so, yeah, some teams can bring a lot of players with them. Some teams didn't make any moves, and this is probably a good reason why.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely. But 100%. Now, the next thing I'm curious about too is we looked at some of the games, we talked about some. I want to know what you think are some potential upsets, looking at how the thing can play out. Obviously, depends on the draw, but when you look at it, depending on how it goes, what are some of those you could see in there being a real upset alert? Like if we're going to compare March Madness, since that's around the corner, some 5 versus 12 upsets. Some of those where it's like, oh, it's like that now.
yeah, it's hard because some of these matchups, like I said, Real Madrid being 11th ranked or PSG being ranked 15th, going into this reseeding, it's hard to call them underdogs in the situation. But let's say we're playing off the number of the seed they finished in the league standings, right? Yeah, PSG number one on my list for probably going to upset somebody, whether it's Barcelona or Liverpool. Yeah, that the upset alert on but like as a legitimate upset, I'm honestly looking at somebody like PSV or Feyenoord against either Arsenal or Inter Milan. I think both teams, Arsenal and Inter, both have an opportunity to just drop the ball and forget how to play defense, or as Liverpool recognizes so well, slip on the ball. Um, Still never lived that down, CVG. Anyways, they have an opportunity. Both teams struggle at times. Hector is an Arsenal fan, so he probably hates hearing that they're potentially on upset alert. But yeah, I think PSV or Feyenoord could be a team that gets past that first round and quote unquote upsets teams. It's hard though, like I said, in this Champions League situation where these guys have already been through the league standings, like the league phase. They've played everybody, not everybody, but they played a lot of the big teams, and now you're in the knockout round, and it almost is even. It's like when you get to the final four of March Madness, it's like almost every team is kind of a 50-50 shot. It's it's not necessarily 50-50. Some of them are 60-40, but it's pretty close in most cases. Now there are a couple that I'm like, probably not, but for the most part, I think across the board, those are the big ones. And now the true 50-50, and this is one that's like not necessarily an upset. I just want to throw it out there. Whoever Dortmund match it up with, whether it's Aston Villa or Lille, I think are two teams that you are looking at and you're wondering who's going to get out. Because those three teams, whichever one gets matched up against Dortmund, uh, it is literally a coin flip. Who's going to actually learn how to play attacking football at that point in time or attacking soccer? Um, that's going to be the real determination. But yeah, some of these other matchups, I'm like Feyenoord and PSV are really that's like a true underdog moment. Everything else, I'm kind of more 50-50, 55-45 on. Nothing truly underdog. Like if we're putting betting odds on it, it's like minus 120 to plus 180 type of situation. So, um, yeah. But those two that I mentioned, PSV and Feyenoord, whoever they end up matching up with, it's probably closer to they're like plus 300 odds to advance. So, little more underdog situation. So those are my two potential upset conversations.
All right. And last but certainly not least, we're putting the feet to the fire. Who's walking out of this whole thing? Who's going to be the winner? Who's going to be the last one standing?
Man, the bias in me wants to say Liverpool. The soccer fan in me wants to say Liverpool. The understanding that every team I support manages to screw it up in the playoffs and knockout rounds tells me that it's not going to be Liverpool. um, Barcelona is always a team to be reckoned with, and I feel like the Champions League final is going to come down to either Bayern Munich or Liverpool. If I'm being honest, as much as I would love to say Barcelona gets there, I think Barcelona, if they get matched up against PSG, or if they don't, even if they get matched up against Benfica, Barcelona still has a chance to be upset more so than Liverpool in that case. Other than the fact that they're a team I support, and every team I support sucks when it comes down to winning. So putting that aside, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, and Liverpool are my two choices for potentially being matching up in the finals. And then from that, I'm gonna have to say Liverpool. Just full bias, full unadulterated bias is the reason why it's that one is a true 50-50 matchup between those two. They both play really interesting soccer, football, and I would enjoy that match beyond belief. So yeah, give me Liverpool. Pull this one out.
I would say if they let you down, we've already have Cordy and Kelsey for what the Cowboys did you. We might have to get losing Liverpool up next. Like this
No,
might turn into a problem.
they've won too many trophies recently for me to say that. But yeah, it's still one of those situations where it does suck when the team I support always manages to slip at the last moment. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's perfectly fair. And throwing my pick out there, I'm gonna go with a little bit of a surprise slash upset. I'm going with Real Madrid for no other reason than it's pronounced Real, and I know that more than most of America does. But I do think they play a really good brand of soccer that I think, depending on the matchups, they will have to avoid some of those heavy hitters here and there if possible. They might need some of those upsets to do some of the dirty work for them here or there, but I think they match up really well with a lot of those teams. So I'm going to go with Real Madrid as my. I will put $5 on, and if it wins, I'm gonna be like, you know what, Kelsey, I am football guy now, and kick my feet back, have my hands behind my head, and I will be claiming bragging rights for at least a week.
you and Hector would flip football guys just in a second. By the way, Hector, Real Madrid fan as well. He's probably a diehard Madrid fan, obviously with the Hala Madrid, more so than Arsenal. But if he had to choose, it's just definitely Real Madrid and then Arsenal second, if I had to imagine. So, um, yeah, yeah. So you're siding with Hector on this one, and you're also siding against a jersey bet. Just want to throw that out
You know what? Beggars can't be choosers. I made my bet. I will land it.
there.
If you could see my feet right now, you'd see they're standing on business for this one. But that's what we have for the UCL round of 16. Be sure to let us know in the comments as well what you think is going to happen, what predictions you have as well. Or you can argue with Hector, who's already got it started in there on X as well. Go ahead and jump in there.